4D Charlie Brown and Lucy with a football acrylic nail art tutorial by Hotpinkzebrapolish.
Hi everybody, in today's video I have a 4D Charlie Brown and Lucy, and so Lucy's holding a football like she's just took it away from Charlie Brown's kick, and he is spinning up in the air. So he actually spins, which is how this design got its 4D qualities. I hope you guys like this as much as I do. This design was actually requested by Terrell a year ago for Thanksgiving, and I just didn't have the time to make it, so I made sure I made it this year, and then I asked him what he thought of it. He goes, "That's cool, where'd you get the idea?" But, you know, that's just how they think. So I hope you guys like it as much as I do, and don't forget to click subscribe to see all my future videos as well.
So I'm going to begin with the background and create a nice little kind of a autumn scene. So I'm going to start with the sky with a pale blue and apply that about, I don't know, 3/5, a little over half of the way down the nail. And just kind of create a straight line going across and then fill in the tip of the nail with yellow. And as you can see, I just cleaned up the line with my brush. I didn't use any wire or anything else or a knife to make that line super straight. As long as it's sort of straight, it's fine. And I'm going to take some green and create kind of like a little bush on one side, and then some orange and blend that into the yellow area to create kind of a variegated leaf ground covered with leaves. So I'm going to encase the nail with a layer of clear acrylic, and I'm just going to apply that over the whole thing. You want to make sure that your clear acrylic is going to be covering your entire design so that all of that detail you just created with the different colors, the green and the yellow and the orange and blue, doesn't get filed away when you file the nail into shape, which is what I will be doing right now. I'm going to file the nail into shape with my e-file, starting out with a fairly coarse bit to remove any bulk. So just kind of going along and cleaning everything up and making sure that it's a really good shape. And then after I have that, I'm going to be filing it with a much finer bit, and this is basically like buffing it. So just go over the whole thing to kind of smooth everything out and perfect it a little bit further. And after we're done with that, then I'm going to start sculpting Miss Lucy. So I have a beige color acrylic, and I'm going to begin with her head. So just add that classic, so all of the Charlie Brown characters have very rounded shapes, all the Peanuts characters I should say, have very rounded shapes and very, kind of if you break it down, they're fairly easy to recreate. So got that peanut, sort of squash peanut head, and then I'm going to be adding her little dress with a slightly darker shade of blue than I used for the sky. So you don't want to use the same color of blue, so as long as you have two separate ones, it's good to go. So just grab a different shade. And she is kneeling, so you don't really see much, like you don't see her legs coming out or anything like that, but you do just see like the very tips of her knees, which I'll show you in just a second. And there is the sleeve of her dress, and back there is the other sleeve of her dress. So she's turned because she just whipped the football away from Charlie Brown, so she's not completely square on as far as the view goes. Her body's a little twisted. So then there's a little bow at the back of her dress that you can see right there, and then there's her knees. Like I said, she's kneeling in the leaves. And then after that, I'm going to take a sort of a medium brown color. I'm going to be adding her football. So the football, like I said, she just twisted and stole it away from Charlie Brown, so it's kind of halfway behind her head. So add it there like that, right to the side of her face. And all of these, this whole 3D creation I'm doing here, they're all fairly flat. It's not extreme 3D with anything sticking way far out. So just kind of keep that in mind when you're working on it. It doesn't have to be anything too crazy. Then I'm going to be adding her hair with black acrylic. So she has bangs, and sort of like 3 little bumps are her bangs. So add them like so, do 3 separate little beads to create that appearance. And then add the rest of her hair down the side of her head with more of that black acrylic. And just like that. Kind of goes down, and again her head is more straight on than the rest of her body, just from the angle that she's at. Add her arm and her hand that's holding onto that football. There's the arm, and there's the hand. And then I'm going to use my e-file, and I'm going to create a little indent where I want Charlie Brown to be. Now if you're doing this on somebody's actual nail, you want to be very cautious when you're doing this, but after you have that little indent, glue a piece of wire into the hole in the nail that's going straight up. And it doesn't need to go all the way through the nail, but just a little groove will help hold that wire in place. Then I'm going to sculpt Mr. Charlie Brown on a nail form backing. So I have the same color of soft beige acrylic that I used for Lucy's head and knees and arm. I'm going to start with his head, and his head is basically a circle except for his mouth is wide open in a yell. So you got to make sure you add his mouth there, and then add his nose. And then with yellow acrylic, I'm going to start adding his shirt. So you have, his body is kind of on a curve. He just flew up in the air, his feet were kicking, and so when you're creating this design, there's a lot of images you can find on the internet, stills from the movie that show this, but you have to kind of almost think of their bodies in motion, which is where the curve of Lucy's whole dress came into play and where the curve of Charlie Brown's shirt does as well. After I have his yellow shirt, I'm going to be adding his little shorts with black. So for his shorts, it's just a really narrow strip of that black acrylic, and then you can kind of pull that into the two separate leg holes, and then have them at slightly different angles, just like that. And again, look at a photo online. There's plenty of them to be found, and you'll see several photos. Add a little sleeve for the sleeve of his arm, and then add just the little tops of his ankles with more of that beige color. But then at some point when your shirt acrylic seems like it's at kind of that matte stage of setting where it isn't completely hardened, but it's just kind of begun to turn into that, take something pokey, a little tip of a manicure scissors or a toothpick or anything, and create a little hole in the middle of Charlie Brown. Then I'm going to be adding his arm right there. And his arm is pulled back and kind of because he was just running with his arms back. So his arm is still pulled back. And then add his brown shoes on the end of each leg, add a shoe. There's the first and the second one. Kind of touch them up and pull them out as much as you can. And then just add, the last thing is kind of goofy, but you'll understand why it's needed in a minute. Just create a little circle of yellow acrylic on the side. Very small, doesn't have to be huge at all. Then string Mr. Charlie Brown through the wire in the nail. If your Charlie Brown, if the hole that you made in his shirt isn't big enough, you can touch that up with your e-file. But then string him through the nail and cut off any extra wire so that he doesn't have much wiggle room in there. And then glue that little yellow circle you created to the end of your wire. So that little yellow circle is basically preventing Charlie Brown from coming off the nail. So it's like a little stopper on the end of the wire. And you pretty much don't see it, which is kind of the idea. So after you have that done, as you can see, that looks pretty good. I'm going to secure my little yellow circle with some clear acrylic underneath it, just so that it doesn't pop off. That nail glue isn't very trustworthy, at least for any amount of time, so that will definitely help. Then I'm going to take some slightly diluted black paint, and I'm going to start all of my outlines and all of the details on these two. The great thing with these Charlie Brown characters, or how I say that, but the Peanuts characters, is that all of their facial features and their designs are fairly similar. So if you are somebody that likes to practice your designs ahead of time, if you practice one of the characters, you kind of have the style of them down, and it makes it very easy to look at a different one and see the minute changes in them and sort of figure out how the next character looks. Because most of it comes down to their clothes and their hair. Really, otherwise they're very, very, very similar. So I'm going to do all the details on Lucy. Her nose, her eyes, the little lines around her eyes, all the outlines on her dress, outline her legs. The reason I diluted my black paint is because it makes those outlines apply a little bit easier, which is something that can definitely be helpful. And then I'm going to go through and do all my details on Charlie Brown too. And when you're doing the details on him, since he isn't stationary like Lucy is, he's not completely attached to the nail, you might notice that it's a little bit awkward to do it, so really hold him in place with your other hand, or even a little bit, a poster putty or something, just to sort of prevent him from spinning while you are adding details to him. So just go through and add all of those fun little details, this zigzag chevron stripe across his shirt, his facial features, fingers, all of that stuff, and then I'm going to be applying a layer of gel sealer over the background. And when you're doing this, be very careful that you don't get any gel sealer on Charlie Brown, because if you do and that cures, it'll glue him stationary, and you want to make sure he can wiggle. And then apply some matte top coat over Lucy and over Charlie Brown, and you're all done. Like I said, this was Charles' idea from a year ago, but I finally made it. I hope you guys like it as much as we do, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!